welcome everybody, and now for coming on. I am the hashtag pleasure doula. Like she said earlier, my name is Alicia. I've been in the sexual health business for almost 11 years now, and I've been a mom for 17 years, and I feel that the two of them are strangely connected. No. So raising a daughter really got me to, think about these types of topics and these discussions, right? But even with my own experiences in my own births and things like that, really, paved the way to which way I was going to take my career path and focus on. So before I begin, I just wanted to do a really quick little smudge for everybody. I know everything that's going on in the world is pretty hairy. Everybody's, a little bit stressed out. And so I do a lot of meditation. I'm very, I like to be very grounded. I am very eccentric and loud and obnoxious. So people get really surprised when they're like, oh, you meditate? How? But yeah, I have a lot of energy. I'm really full of all kinds of energy. So I just wanted to quickly, clear anything that you might have going on this week or today, and I just want to send out some good vibrations, literally and figuratively. I just wanted you all to just feel the love, feel the light. You are all beautiful. You are all in the right place at the right time where you need it to be. And so I just wanted to encourage you to, feel the love, and you are all worthy and deserve it. So a little bit about my journey. Let's see. Like I said earlier, I became a mom 17 years ago. I was 19 years old, and I was raised in a Baptist church and had no knowledge of my cultural teachings. I had no identity, really. I just followed with my grandparents and my parents and just stayed a really good Christian girl. And so I met my husband at a young age, and he was very traditional, and he followed the ways and the culture and the teachings and everything. And so obviously I followed suit, and I started to learn everything that I could, right? And all the aspects that it had to do with being a mom, being a person, being a human being, and who I was as an Nguhua woman, as a Native woman, a Mohawk woman. And so when I became a mom, I had no idea what I was doing. I had never heard of midwives. I had never heard of doulas. I had never heard of even being in charge of your own birth. And so it wasn't a super traumatic birth, but it wasn't fun either. And so going through that experience, and I had rude nurses. I felt like my OB just wanted to hurry up, get me in and get me out, because like I was burdening him. I was in his way. And so having that experience for myself and reflecting with my husband, I wasn't happy. And I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. I thought it's supposed to be fun. I thought it's supposed to be beautiful and loving and all this, amazing, glowing experience. And I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a voice one bit. So a year later, I got pregnant again. Mind you, it wasn't a traumatic birth. So I was like, I want to do this again, right? When I was a teenager, I did not want any kids. So when I got pregnant with my first one, I was like, oh, what are we going to do? And then I had her, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I want to do this again. So I got pregnant with my second one a year later. And my mother-in-law had actually had 2 home births. And so she took me under her wing and started to guide me and give me information and encourage me in the direction where I would start to learn that I do have a voice and this is my body and I'm in control of it, right? And so she hooked me up with a midwife in town here, and it just rocked my world. It was the best decision I could have ever made. Every time I met with my midwife, everything was, okay, what do you need? Okay, what would you like? Okay, so how do you feel? It was always me. And I was like, I kind of like this. I like it when people want to talk about me. And so, you know, I really got into learning about what it was that had to do with birth and tradition and teachings and things like that, right? So I took my chance, not my chance, but I took a try at having a home birth. I know I could have did it, but I didn't do it. I wasn't fully ready, prepared. I was still pretty green at this, giving birth, and I didn't have a slew of support behind me to push me and encourage me and cheer me on, right? My mother was very hesitant. She was super nervous about it. And I was like, we're going to have this baby at your house, Mom. And she's like, why? What's wrong with the hospital? I had all you and your siblings at the hospital. Why aren't you going to the hospital, you know? And now I get it, right? Now I get why people are like that. But back at that time, I was like, why can't you just support me? Why can't you just encourage me, you know? And so we tried the home birth, and I just exhausted myself. I was excited. I was anxious. I was trying to control every situation that was happening at that time instead of just surrendering and letting my body do the work. And I just exhausted myself, and they took me to the hospital. Mind you, the minute I started getting up, moving around and getting ready to go to hospital, I almost had him in the car on the way there, you know? So that was an experience. It was beautiful, even though it wasn't what I wanted, right? It was not my perfect birth plan. And at that time, I was like, okay, I failed because I didn't do what I wanted. I didn't get what I wanted. But you know what? When I sit here and I look back and I think about it, I'm like, no, that was exactly what I deserved. And that was exactly what I needed to learn for the next one, and then the next one, right? So so then, yeah, I had him, my second born, and it was beautiful. It was fast. The labor was long. It was all night long, but the delivery was fast. And so I was like, okay. We had been together a few years at this point. I had started really working on myself internally, dealing with my own traumas and things like that, not realizing that traumas have so much to do with the connection of who we are inside, with the connection we have to mother, with the connection that we have to, you know, being life givers. It's such a beautiful and huge connection. So I'm starting to piece these things together as I'm going through these pregnancies. And a few years later, I have a third one coming. Same thing. I went back with the same midwives and I gave them my plan and what I wanted to do. However, I did not take care of myself in the sense that I ate whatever I wanted to. And my blood pressure was not nice. And I didn't get to stay home. She was not having it. And I was upset and I was bummed. And again, I felt like a failure. I felt like I didn't do it right and I messed it up and it was all my fault. But I had the pleasure of being in the hospital with women who were so supportive. And at this time, I had my sister there, my oldest daughter there, my mother there, one of my very best friends was there, my husband was there, you know, like, so I was starting to build this community around me that engulfed me and built me up people that made me feel safe, people that made me feel good, that I knew they were going to be there no matter what I decided, right? And that's the key, right? That's the key for us to feel grounded and feel centered in everything that we are and everything that we do, right? If you have your partner who's kind of wishy-washy and whatever and hesitant on your decisions and things, it's kind of going to make you feel like, well, I don't know if I should go through with this plan, right? Because we're women, we're warriors. We tend to care about everybody else before ourselves, right? We always want to make sure our partner is good, our kids are good, our friends are good, our mom and dad is good, our grandparents. We always want to worry about everybody else before we take care of ourselves and our own feelings. But that was the time, that was the point when I was like, what am I been doing all this time? Birth is for me. This is my birth. Why am I worried about whether my husband wants to do this or not? Why am I worried about whether my mother's scared or not? That was my light bulb. That's when things turned on for me and I was like, oh, this is not happening no more. So my son, my third son, was about a year old, and I decided to take on a business that had to do with sexual health, sexual wellness. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was fun and it was exciting and whatever, and I never in a million years would have thought that it would have brought me to this today. But I took on this business and I started to learn more about the female body, about pleasure, about what that really means, sensuality and sexuality, what those things really mean, and how they tie into birth, how they tie into, I mean, you can't have sexuality without conception. So how they all tied together. So when I took on this business, I really stopped to think that, shoot, if I'm out here trying to preach to these women about their bodies, I better start walking the walk. I better start learning about my body. I better start connecting myself and grounding myself, getting back to my ceremonies, getting back to my teachings, and really focusing on the one most important person in my life, which was me. Because the longest relationship any one of us will ever be in is the relationship with ourselves. And if we can't connect with ourselves and be fully 100% in tune with who we are, there's going to be these rocky moments. There's going to be these times where we doubt ourselves, or, you know, we fall off our path or our tracks or things like that, right? And so when we continue to keep listening to who we are, right, and paying attention to what it is and who it is that we want to be every single day, that helps to keep us on our path. That helps to keep our focus, right? For the longest time, I was always all about my kids. I was always waiting on them hand and foot. I was always worried if my husband was happy or not. And I was running around in pajamas and my hair's up to here and I got, you know, I'm just a mess, and I'm like cleaning and cooking and just going nuts. But I didn't even know who I was, you know? I didn't know what it was that I liked, you know? And it put a strain on my relationship with myself as well as the relationship with my husband. Because when we would try to have intimate moments, I didn't even know what I liked. I didn't even know what it was that I wanted. And here I am in the sexual health business trying to help all these other women with their relationships and their, you know, marriages and things like that. But here I am, can't even walk the walk. So when you really start to focus on yourself, and my husband would get after me over and over and over, if mom's not happy, nobody's going to be happy. So why are you in here trying to, you know, wait on us hand and foot? You're not Cinderella. Stop now. You got to focus on you. Go do stuff for yourself, you know? And so it was a really, really hard pill to swallow, because I had been living, like I said earlier, I had grown up in a Baptist family where the women are supposed to take care of the men. I watched both of my grandmothers and my mother take care of the men. No questions asked, no complaints, none whatsoever. And so I was like, that's how I'm going to be. That's my job. I'm going to take care of my man, and I'm not supposed to say one word. But I didn't even know who I was. And I wasn't miserable, but I wasn't happy either. And so getting into a relationship with a man who comes from a matrilineal system, I was like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me I get to say something? Wait a minute, this is my house? I get to say what goes on in this house? Wait a minute, this is weird, you know? And so I'm in this business for a few years, and I'm meeting women of all walks of life. Women who have been through sexual traumas, women who had, you know, lost so much in their relationships with their partners and relationships with themselves. And I didn't even realize like the impact that I was making, but I'm such a outgoing person, and I like to have fun. I'm always laughing, and I'm always giggling, and just like, I'm like a little kid. I always laugh, and I talk to my in-laws. I'm like, it's crazy. There's like 2 grown children in this house running this house. How do we get anything done here? But I was meeting all these ladies and all these parties that I was doing, and I'm thinking like, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something more for these women to be able to feel that they matter, that everything that they want, whether it's sensual or sexual, it's all normal. It's all normal, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, you know? And so I really got into that business really hard, and I never expected in a million years that it was going to take off the way it did. And so I was working really hard at my business, and I had 3 children at home. But like I said, I was starting to forget who I was, and I started to worry about my husband and my children more than I was worrying about myself. And we started to have some troubles in the home. And we struggled for a while. We had to separate and work on our own issues, and then come back and meet in the middle again. But it took a long time, and it was an ugly, bumpy road. But I don't regret one bit of it, because it wouldn't have made me the strong woman that I am now, the loving woman that I am now, because man, do I ever love that man more than ever. But I love myself even more. And so at that time, I kept saying I wanted to have another baby. And he's like, not until you get better. Not until you start taking care of yourself. And I'm like, okay. 1 month later, we were pregnant. Creator had way bigger plans, way bigger plans. So that was the pregnancy that really turned me around. That was the pregnancy where I took the reins, and I was like putting my foot down now. And I wish that every other woman out there has that same opportunity to realize, to understand, to know that she has the opportunity to put her foot down and say, no, this is how it's going to be. This is what I want. And so with my 4th one, it was a perfect pregnancy. I didn't try, you know, I wasn't forcing anything. I just let creation do what it's supposed to do. I stayed healthy. I kept exercising. I ate properly. I had a blast. It was a really, really good pregnancy. So when the time came to actually go into labor, I got my perfect birth, the one that I had always envisioned. And that one was fast. That one was super fast. And I really really believe it was because of the connection that I had with myself, and the fact that I really grounded myself, meditating, yoga, you know, nature. I'm always like, I like to be outside. I'd like to really focus on my surroundings outside of cities, right? I don't like the concrete jungle life. I like to be in the country. I really, really, really appreciate the country. And so I went into that labor. All I wanted was me, my husband, and my kids. And my midwives were absolutely amazing. They were flies on the wall. They didn't even bother me. They didn't even say nothing. They didn't do nothing. I did it all by myself with my kids and my husband. And I always laugh because my third one was, I think it was like 3 or 4 at the time. They were all right in there. This was their very first experience, well, except my oldest one. And so they were all like, Mom, what's going on? And my little guy, I remember leaning over my yoga ball, and my husband's on the opposite side holding my hands. And I remember like having a contraction, and I remember sitting up and looking up, and he's standing over my husband, and he's like, come on, Mama. He's talking in Mohawk, and he's like, come on, Mama, you're doing it. Come on, Mama, do it. And I'm like, I lost it at that point. I was laughing, and, you know, we were goofing around in between contractions and just having, it was amazing. You know, it was just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. I have to count. It was just the 5 of us in my bedroom. And that's where I wanted it, was in my bedroom. I wanted my candles lit. I didn't want nobody around, you know. I wanted to just be left alone, to just be inside and to just focus on me and what it is that I was supposed to be doing. Praying to my baby, praying to creation, you know, praying and really trying to focusing on that. And I became a huge fan. At that pregnancy, I became a huge fan of Ina May. And so I was religiously reading all her books at that time. And so that was when I started to learn different techniques of dilating and all of those things. So I was like doing the guttural, you know, moaning and like really opening it up. And my kids are making me laugh, and I'm trying to focus because they're like, why does she sound like a cow? And I'm trying so hard to like keep my focus, and they're like being goofy in the background, chirping me and whatever. But she came out, my little girl came out, and it was the most beautiful experience I had ever had. And it just blew my mind. It just blew me right away. And that, I was like, every woman deserves this. Every woman deserves a chance at this. It was beautiful. It was surreal. It was just what I wanted. And so I started to connect sexual health, sexual wellness, as well as traditional and spiritual teachings into all of this, tying it all together. Because when we think about sexuality or sensuality, the very first thing to bring us to life is the act of sex. And if we can't even talk about that, you know, we need to start to figure out why or what's holding us back from that. But in order for you to be here, in order for your children to be here, there had to be sex. And so when you start to focus on that sexual connection with somebody in procreating, right, and making babies and things like that, everything that has to do with creation is all around a mom, right? And your very first home is inside your mother. And your path when you come out, whether, you know, however you have your children, whether it's vaginally or C-section, you come out of your mother, right? And so it's a very powerful and it's a very sensual experience. But we've become so numb to it because we're afraid of the pain, and we're afraid of what can go wrong. And so that's when my husband and I, we decided to stop thinking that way, to stop focusing on the fact that it's painful and to start focusing on, what if we teach our daughter about having children as a beautiful experience, as a sexual and sensual experience, in the sense that it's all her and her body. If we get rid of the whole stigma of it being horrible and painful and all of that other stuff that comes along with it, right? Because when we talk birth stories, we hear a lot of trauma. We hear a lot of trauma, and it breaks my heart that women have to go through that women have to deal with that kind of stuff, you know? And I just, in the work that I do now, that's all I think about is, how can we make this better for us? How can we do something? How can we make a change for the women? Right from birth, how your birth is and how beautiful you can do that with your children, watching your children be born, watching your children have children, to help to encourage it to be such a beautiful experience. I had my daughter, my fourth one, at home, and it really motivated me. Boy, did it ever light a fire under my rear end. And so I got into doula work. I got into the doula work, started talking to other moms, and it's funny because a lot of the other doulas and a lot of the other ladies that I talk to, they always laugh and they're like, "You've been doing doula work all this time. You're so encouraging. You're so positive. You're so supportive in all of that it does, that it entails when we're talking up to other pregnant women." And I was like, well, shoot, let's keep doing this then. What else can I do? Oops. So for it to be such a beautiful experience for me, I decided that I wanted to do it again. We were just not stopping. And so we got pregnant in 2016, but it wasn't happening. And at that time, I had never experienced a miscarriage. I had never experienced anything like that. And it crushed me because I felt like, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Because I had never had any issues with the other pregnancies. Even when I went to the hospital, they were like, how many miscarriages have you had before this? And I'm like, none, this is the first one. And they're like, you have 4 kids at home? And I'm like, yeah, you know? And so it was hard. And I felt very down on myself. Did I lose my connection? Did I fall off my path somewhere? Why am I not aligned here? You know, I like to keep the meditation and the alignment and all of that going all the time. What happened? Where did I go wrong? And my midwife at the time, I had a new midwife. I had an indigenous midwife at this time. And so she was so amazing. The doulas that I had, they were absolutely amazing. They would let me cry. They would hold me. They would give me space to just feel what it was that I was going through. And I bounced back. It was a little bit, but I bounced back. And so a few months later, my midwife says, you know, your body's got muscle memory. You know, it's not to say you're done. When you're ready, you can try again. Months later, I tried again and we were pregnant again. So excited, but I was super hesitant, walking on eggshells. Didn't want to do anything wrong. Didn't want to say anything wrong. Didn't even want to move because I didn't want nothing to happen. Didn't matter. It wasn't in the cards. I lost the second one. I lost for a second time. And this time was really bad because I had to go rush. Well, both times I was rushed to the hospital, but the second time I had to go and stay overnight and get, blood transfusions. So that was it. I shut down. My alignment was like this. I was done. I was a mess. I didn't want to deal with anybody. I didn't want to deal with anything. I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. Well, what am I doing? Who do I think I am? Thinking I'm some wonderful woman who can just birth babies like nothing and just have this wonderful, easy peasy life, right? Who do I think I am? I should be grateful for what I already have. That was all the crazy things that was going through my head. Boy, did I ever beat myself up. I got really ugly with myself and angry. I tried real hard to keep my focus and keep myself on my path because I didn't want to forget what I had already in my plate, right? My beautiful family I already had here. And so I became a workaholic, and I started doing my business even more. And you know what? Well, if I'm done, I'm done. If I can't have any more babies, then I'm done. That's it. Nothing else I can do about it. But I can help other women. And so I went and I took the doula training. Man, was that ever beautiful. Oh my goodness, I met so many amazing women in that training who even now to this day are very, very, very close friends of mine. And they helped me through that trauma. They helped me through those miscarriages. They let me cry. They let me scream. They helped me heal. They gave me space to work through that. And I was like, that's what I want. That's what I want for other women, is to have that same space. And so that was another chapter for me to, think about adding to my sexual health, sexual wellness, rapport. Little did I know during that doula training, I was already pregnant. And there was something about that doula training because there was quite a bit of us that got pregnant. And so I did that training. I ended up getting my very first client, my very first official client after having my doula training. And I was super pumped. All I could think about was, how can I help her to see her strength and her power and everything that she is feminine. And I just talked to her the way I would want somebody to talk to me, and encourage her the way I would want somebody to encourage me. She would call me crying. My mom, she was a VBAC. She had, her first one was C-section. This was her second one, and she was going with the midwives, and she was determined. Nobody was going to turn her around. And I was like, ooh, yes, this is my perfect first client. She would call me crying though, and she was so upset because people were very discouraging, very disheartening, telling her her body ain't gonna work, her body's not gonna do it. You couldn't do it the first time. What makes you think you can do it this time? Boy, did she ever show them wrong. And that was right there, like an indication to me, like, we forget our strength and we forget our power. You know, there are times when we have to get into the operating room. Don't get me wrong, it's gotta happen. Babies coming here, no matter what, right? But for her to be able to say, I'm gonna try this and this is what I'm gonna do, and then to go for it, that was a beautiful experience. Such a beautiful experience. And I was like, this is my job. I don't ever want to leave this. I want to watch babies be born and hold mom's hand and clean her house and tell her she's beautiful and a rock star. So it was absolutely amazing to be into that experience. And then there was ladies after that, you know, I had other clients, but I'll never forget my first. We never forget our first, right? Just kidding. And so, yeah, so I was pregnant in that one. And that was funny. It was so funny because I wasn't going to tell anybody. I mean, I had just had 2 traumas. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to share my information with anybody until I couldn't hide it no more. I was actually at a conference with the company that I'm in, with the sexual health and wellness. And we had to dress up and for a awards banquet. And the dress that I brought, I couldn't fit. I was sucking it in. I was trying to hold it in and zip it up in the back, and it wasn't happening. But luckily, there was a lady there who had a dress that was stretchy, and she was like, here, try this on. And I'm like, I must have just gained some weight since the last time I wore this. I don't know what's going on. It's weird. So I put that dress on, but it was so fitting, huh? It was so slimming, and all of a sudden you see me, and then boom, there's a belly. Everybody's like, what is that? Some of my really close friends in my job were on to me. They figured it out, and my secret was out. So my focus that time, again, was another home birth. And I had started to write a book on sensuality, sexuality, culture, traumas, things like that. I had started, I was in the process of putting that together. So I started to focus on what it was that I was really good at it. And it was about sexuality. I was like all about talking about orgasms. I was talking about, anatomy and the clitoris and the G-spot. And I was like all over the place. And I was like, this is what I do, guys. This is where I'm at. So how does this connect to birth, right? And then I watched the Orgasmic Birth experience. Boom! My mind was blown. I was like, this is it. This is me. I am the pleasure doula. And I started to really focus on how our body works when we're pregnant and how that ties into sexuality. Man, was this so much fun because I was pregnant and I could do my own research. It was great. But to be able to, focus on taking away the taboo and the stigma behind sexuality and sensuality, and to really approach it from a normal standpoint where we're not going, ew, orgasms, or ew, sex, or things like that, right? Really made a difference in my business, but even in my own personal life. Like I said, it had been years that I had been working in this business and learning more and more what it was to be sexual with yourself, with your partner, right? Reconnecting your spirit and really focusing on your alignment. Because if you have even the slightest little bit of shift in your alignment, it's going to throw the whole thing off. And then you got to stop. You got to focus on each part of your being to help bring that back, reconnect that spirit, ground that spirit, be the light, right? Have the light over you all the time, especially when we're carrying babies. Because I'm all about ceremony, and so when I'm pregnant, I'm like so in ceremony mode when I get pregnant. So anyways, I'm having my 5th one. I was so excited. Couldn't believe it. It was hard. I was tired. I was older. I was not 19 anymore. And we moved in the middle of my pregnancy. So we uprooted our family, and it was a bit of a stir. It was a bit of a shift in myself that I had to really stop and really slow down and focus on just me. Just listen to me. Just nope. Put my blinders on. Let the family take care of it. the move and everything else, right? 6 people at the time, moving an entire building, an entire house, everything. It was a big deal, right? But thankfully, at this point, I had been so grounded in my doula work, in my self work, and having the support that I had around me. It was an easier transition than it should have been. So by the time it was time to come and have this baby, well, he didn't want to come out. First of all, he didn't want to come out, so he put his legs down here, and he was like, He was like, I'm not coming out, and he stayed head up. I was like, come on, man. So we had to flip him around, and then that's when I find out the lady at the hospital, when she did the ultrasound and flipped him, she says, you have a really big womb. How many children have you had? I'm like, this is number 5. She goes, well, that's about a 9-pound baby in there, and that baby's got a lot of room to move around still, so you might want to consider taking it easy so he don't flip back around. In my mind, I'm like, shoot. I thought I wasn't going to be able to stay home. My husband's like, yeah, you are. We're going to have this baby at home, whether he's upside down or right side up or sideways or whatever. So he ended up staying in there for almost 2 weeks, longer than I gave him an eviction notice. I was like, get out. This is my last one. Get out. I'm done. I did my time. So he, when he was born at night, and he was born in this room right here. It was beautiful. That's when I realized how connected I was with myself, because I had an out-of-body experience. Like I said earlier, I had watched that Orgasmic Birth. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but you guys should totally check that out if you're not. So it's not about the act of orgasm, sexual. It's sensual. It's pleasure, right? You gotta remember that pleasure, orgasm, all that stuff. It doesn't always just necessarily mean sex with your partner or by yourself, right? It's a part of pleasure. And here's the thing. We are all born with a pleasure button. All women are born with it. It's called the clitoris. And its sole purpose on our body is to provide pleasure. Hey. So it has, you're already born with the innate to be able to have that pleasure, right? So why deny yourself it? So let's try and make this, so I'm thinking, let's try and make this experience more pleasurable. Let's make this experience more sensual. How can I get inside myself and experience something like so mind-blowing, right? Boy, was I ever in for it. I slept through the entire delivery. The entire labor. I could not believe it. My doula got here. I was sleeping in my room, and she come down and she says, you need to get up. I think you should start moving around, and because you're getting pretty loud in your sleep. And I'm like, I am? By the time I come upstairs, I had already been 2 minutes apart. She was like, I'm going to call the midwife and see. We need to check what's going on here. By the time the midwife got here, it had been almost an hour later. My husband was setting up my tub, getting ready to go. I was like, guys, I feel like I need to push. And they're like, okay. But he wasn't quite down yet. He was still a little bit too high. And this experience was absolutely out of this world. It was like, I was so high. I'm like, I just want every woman to feel like this every day. What had happened was he wasn't down all the way, but I was fully dilated. And I just kept praying and praying and praying and talking to him and telling him, come on down. We want to meet you. We love you. We want to see you. We want to hold you. All the while I'm telling my husband, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm too old for this. But you need to come down because we love you and we want to hold you. And right when I started to envision the inside of me and to be there holding my baby inside of me, he listened. And my doula says, you and your husband need to go off and be alone. So him and I went into the bathroom just for a couple minutes. We weren't even in there long. He held me, he hugged me, he rubbed my back, he encouraged me. He told me how much I could do this and all this and that. And I said, this is it. I need to get back in that room. So I came back in the room and I sat on the ball for another few more minutes, and I was rocking and rocking. And I wasn't hollering anymore. I wasn't in pain. I started contracting and I was moaning. And my husband's like, what's going on here? Why are you doing that? And something just took right over, right? I just completely surrendered my entire body, my entire being, and I just let happen what needed to happen. And I jumped up and I was like, I can feel the ring of fire. I can feel, he's right there. And I went to stand up. They said, next contraction, stand up and come sit on the bed. So I stood up off the ball. He fell right out. It was insane. I was like, oh my God. It was so amazing. I wasn't in any sort of pain. I was like higher than high. I was bliss. I felt like I was up in the air watching down, looking at everything going on. I was just like, and they're like, grab your baby. And I'm like, what baby? I was gone, and I'm like, wow, what kind of drugs was that? It was insane. And so I'm half carrying him. I still have placenta hanging out in there. And I'm like walking over to the bed, like, what's going on here? And that was within like 2 hours. I couldn't believe it. So after we were talking about it, my midwife and everybody and the doulas there, and I was like, what was that all about? And that's when they started to say, I think you had an orgasmic birth, because you were smiling, you were just rocking and moaning. And I was just like so in love. And because I was connected with him and praying and envisioning him, I was already in that moment. I was already there. I was already having my experience of out-of-body experience, I guess you could say. I don't know. It was so unreal. So unreal. So those are my birth stories. I have 5 of them. I have 5 children here. I had the 2 miscarriages. I don't exclude them because they're still an experience. And I believe that they don't get nobody don't speak about it enough, right? I had never heard about the experience of a miscarriage before until I went through it. And then I find out it's 1 in 4 women. I couldn't believe it, and I had already had 4 kids, so I had no idea. So those are my birth experiences and some of the work that I've done with the doula work. So now I am fully and happy and done. I don't want no more babies. I had my experiences and I'm so happy and I'm so proud and I'm very content where I'm at now. Before I was like, I'm gonna have 9 kids. Now I'm like, I'm tired. My oldest is gonna be 17 next year. She can start and I'll help her. But now I get into I still do my sexual health and all of that stuff, and I work through helping women through their traumas, because once we're disconnected with who we are, we're already going to be more inclined to allow others to tell us how our body's going to work. So if we've been traumatized when we're young, or even traumatized in our younger years, right? Before we have kids and things like that, we're easier to allow a doctor or somebody out there to tell us how our body works, instead of giving us options, instead of saying, encouraging, instead of trying different methods, right? And when we have those disconnections with our own being and our own spirit, and we can't love ourselves the way we deserve to be loved, then we can't acknowledge love when it comes and hits us right in the face. And so all of this ties in, and all of this works together, and it's all a big, beautiful ball of life. And it's my entire purpose. It's all I ever want to talk about. It's all I ever, every time people are like, so how's work? So how's this? So how's that? And I'll just go on and on and on. And sometimes the look on their face is like, why? I didn't want to hear all that, but I can't help it. So things, when you're starting to bring that spirit back and you start to get that connection back again, will help to build you up to getting these empowered birth experiences, whether it's your perfect birth plan or not, to even just feel empowered, right? To even just have that sense of like, I did this, regardless of the outcome, I did this, to just be proud, and to have that person next to you, whether it's your partner or your doula or, you know, your midwife, to have that person, that safety person, that safety net that's gonna encourage you and be there and push you, right? And to be your voice when you can't be your voice. Because in some of my births, I was like, just give me all the drugs, I don't care. And my husband and my doula are like, no, she doesn't mean that. So yeah, so you cannot have any of that without sex, right? So that was just a little bit of me in a nutshell, a little bit of birth experiences, and what it is that I do as a sexual health educator. I like to call myself the romance specialist too. I like to call myself all kinds of fun things. So I don't know, did anybody want to throw up any questions or?
Well, first, Alicia, you've talked about being a pleasure doula and working in sexual health and your business, but can you just actually talk about what that is?
Which one?
Yeah, because I feel like you've mentioned it, of course, but exactly what that work looks like would be
My
fun.
business? Okay, so I go into the homes and I talk about sexual health in the sense that pleasure. Hang on, somebody wants to say hi. Oh, say go. Say go. Oh, watch out. So most of you guys are pretty familiar with Tupperware parties and party light parties, princess house parties. I do those similar kind of parties, but with a little bit of a buzz. So what I do is I come into your home and I teach women about romance. I teach women about intimacy. I teach women about the fact that it's totally normal. It's totally normal to be sexual, to be sensual, whether it's with your partner, with yourself, or with toys. I give the information on learning about the anatomy, learning about, like I said, the G-spot, the orgasm, and all that awesome fun stuff. And so what I get to do is I get to go to work at other women's homes, talking about sexual health, talking about orgasms, and making it fun, making it normal. I'm not, you know, those sticky floor stores where you're feeling awkward because you're looking at things that shouldn't be inserted in a vagina and it's not funny because, you know, those yucky stores. I don't do that. I'm a very classy, very professional consultant. And so what I do is I come in, I have my catalogs, I have my products, I sell a lot of bedroom accessories, but I also sell a lot of bath accessories as well. Because what I believe is that foreplay starts in the morning, right? So when we first wake up first thing in the morning, we want to smell good. We want to feel good in the skin that we are in. So what I do is I help to encourage that with amazing products that have, you know, ways to teach us and feel how to bring the right woman to the bedroom. I don't mean no third wheel. I'm not talking threesomes here. I mean you. It's about bringing you wholly into the bedroom, feeling good, feeling excited. And so over the years, I have done these parties with other women and done a lot of training. So now I'm getting into sexual health through Indiana University, and I took a course with the School of Womanly Arts in New York City a few years back, and I'm restarting that as well right now. So, but these are all like connection into the feminine, into the divine, you know, and starting to own your pleasure, own your body, right? When you own your pleasure, you know every aspect of your body and where you feel good, where you don't feel good. So when you can tie that into birth, when you can tie that into, you know, giving your body to a partner, it makes a world of a difference, right? So having that opportunity to meet these women, like I said earlier, that have been traumatized from, you know, sexual harassment and things like that, or trauma from childhood, and they've been disconnected. That was my trigger right there to tell me that I was in the job that I deserved and I needed to be in, because women were telling me that they had been with doctors, they had been with psychologists and all this and that to help them get through these types of battles with their traumas. But I was making it fun and making it normal, and it's totally fine to have an orgasm. Whether it's with your partner, yourself, or a toy, it doesn't matter, right? Pleasure is pleasure. Pleasure can come from eating your favorite piece of chocolate. Pleasure can come from having your favorite meal, right? And we automatically think like pleasure is something dirty, but it's not. It's about taking it back and owning it. I just got myself a fur coat and I feel very pleasurable in that fur coat. So whenever we start to, I'm all about reconnecting the spirit, right? Because it's such a big, powerful aspect of our entire being. So whenever I talk about reconnecting the spirit, it helps to bring that pleasure back. And it's not always necessarily just has to do with being pleasurable sexually. It's sensual, right? And so I get to go to ladies' homes and talk about all these fun things and sell the products that I do. It's pleasure products. It's bedroom accessories. It's lingerie, because when you wear lingerie, it's about how you feel. It's not what you look like, right? And so, you know, all kinds of different products like that to help bring some sexuality and sensuality to your relationship with you and with your partner.
So let's just say, you know, there are some people that watch these recordings and maybe they're pregnant, maybe they've just given birth, maybe they've, you know, been with their partner and just things aren't the same as, you know, when before they had their child. You know, how would you just have those conversations with people? Just of the ever-changing dynamics of sexuality, and you know, during all of those different experiences. So just pretend like, you know, we are one of those people who's coming to you and, you know, is in one of those phases and is wanting support. You know, where would you begin?
Awesome question. That's a really good question, because as women, we don't ourselves enough credit, right? And so when we're feeling down and out, we don't feel like those hot, sexy ones that we are, right? It really throws a wrench in our life. So that's a really, really good, and it does come up a lot for myself. It's always about giving yourself time. You know, you have to really slow it down. You can't be pregnant and expect it to just boom, 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 right? There's ups and downs in your pregnancy because you got the fluctuation of your hormones, and you got this, sometimes you get big D and you're like, whoa, I don't feel so sick, I feel so hot, right? But you just got to slow it down, and you just got to really focus to yourself, in the sense that maybe I could just get in the tub, give my a few minutes alone to just feel sensual, to just feel the skin that I'm in, right? Things like lubrication is an underrated product, but it's very beneficial, and it can be a lot of fun too. And so after birth, lubrication is a big, big, big part, because you've just given birth. Give yourself some credit, you know, and using a little bit of lubrication will make everything so much more pleasurable. And when we're not feeling up to par, we're not feeling ourselves, that little bit of lubrication can help to heighten the sensitivity down there, to help bring those nerve endings alive again, to remind you of those sensual and sexual feelings that you have naturally. And lubrication just helps to smooth that out, right? It just helps to give it a more silky feel. So there's no type of like friction feeling. There's no type of like irritation feeling, right? And so like think about it when you like rub your lips together and you got nothing on and they're just dry. It's not a nice feeling. But if you put chapstick on or you lick your lips, all of a sudden your lips feel nice and silky, soft and smooth, right? And they feel sexy. So lubrication makes a huge, huge difference, whether it's anytime, actually, whether you're pregnant, post, or anything, it doesn't matter. Lubrication makes a huge difference. And a big myth about lubrication, like I said earlier, people have the misjudgment that it's only for when you get older. It's only for that menopause time. It's only for after menopause. But really, if we take antihistamines, right? Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people suffer from allergies. We take antihistamines, that completely dries out our system, right? And so when we're drying out our system, we're already giving ourselves, setting ourselves up to any type of dryness. Anti-inflammatories, right? Tylenols, things like that. Anything that starts with anti, it's gonna go ahead and dry out your whole system. And it will cause some discomfort when you're trying to be pleasurable, whether you're with a partner, with a toy, or by yourself, you know? And so those types of things really makes a difference in the pleasure, in trying to feel, you know, more sensual and sexual with yourself, with your partner. And like I said, just giving yourself time, giving yourself more credit, you know, putting on a piece of lingerie, that makes a world of a difference. I know for myself, I dealt with body image for a long time, you know, and I had to really retrain my brain to remind myself, like, I had 5 children, 5 beautiful babies in this body. This body's a powerhouse. I should be proud. I'm gonna put this lingerie on and I'm gonna feel sexy no matter what. You know, just because we look at these pieces in society, it just really messes us up with the magazines and the supermodels and all that stuff. It really puts a strain and a damper on how we feel, especially when we're vulnerable in pregnancy and postpartum as well.
What about just a difference in like, you know, I just hear from so many people that they're worried that they won't, you know, be that sexual person that they were before, just because, you know, the demands on a body, or just the experience of nursing a baby all day long, or just all of the physiological changes that happen in postpartum. And you know, and so I feel like I am doing a lot of work with just trying to normalize that it's okay if things aren't just rocking your world for right now, or that you just, you know, are it's not part of your week, or whatever, for a time. And that, you know, people can, you know, step away from, you know, sex with partners, for a time, and then redefine it for themselves. So I guess just if you want to just talk about, you shared about lube and body image and feeling sexy again, but also just talk about, you've had these different ebbs and flows and changes in drive, with, different times where you're feeling really good in your relationship, or times when energy is different, time when age and, demands on your family are different, and and you have, uh, years now, 2 decades of a relationship, of that ebb and flow, in a partnership. And so, if I just would love for you to offer for people who might be experiencing this shift or change for the very first time
Yeah.
in their
It's
relationship.
a big deal too, isn't it? It's a really big deal. It really, like you said, puts a big damper. And when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to your intimacy with yourself, with your partner, it's the biggest, the most important tool, the most important body part in that setting is your tongue. And I ain't even talking about anything sexually. I'm talking about talking. When you're talking, when you're communicating, when you're sharing how you feel, right? Owning yourself and owning your emotions, owning all the feelings that you're having. Talking with your partner makes a world of a difference, because really they can't read our minds, right? And so they really want to know. You have a partner who's so loving and supportive. Your partner, he just wants to know. That person just wants to know what it is that you need at this moment, when you're feeling down, when you're not feeling yourself, when you don't really have a sex drive going on. You just had a baby, you're nursing, and nursing is like, holy shoot, that's a 24-hour thing, like you don't even feel like you ever get a minute. There's days when you feel like you're just nursing all day long. Geez, I hadn't had a shower in like 2 days, so using your tongue to the communication really, really, really makes a difference. Utilizing doulas make a world of a difference in helping out to give you that moment of peace and serenity for yourself. Whether you want somebody to just hold your hand while you cry and let your feelings out, whether you want to take a nap and your doula just takes off with the baby outside for a walk or something, take a shower, take a hot bath. Those types of things will help too, to alleviate that stress and all of that on our shoulders that we deal with every single day, especially when we have little ones, but you had mentioned about taking a break with your partner, kind of thing, like to not be so sexual with your partner. And that's a really good idea too, because we need to bring our energies back, and we need to center ourselves, because when we go through birth, we're all opened up, right? Our connection to our sky world, because that's where our children come from, our connection is all opened right up, right? And so we're so susceptible to hormone fluctuations and all of this going on, that we need to like bring ourselves back here and center ourselves, put ourselves back into our space, so that we can reconnect with our partner, reconnect with our children and everyone else, right? But to focus on who we are as an individual, not as a mom, not as a wife, but who we are as an individual, what it is that you like, what it is that you want, right? And when you bring that connection back, being sensual, being sexual, being intimate with yourself will make a difference. The sexual touch that you have. Oh my goodness, I was in a training not too long ago, and the lady was talking about how you caress your baby when you're trying to put your baby to sleep, and you're touching your baby's forehead, and you're touching the side of your baby's face. Touch yourself like that. Give yourself a stroke on the side of your face, just like that, like as if you would touch a baby. It makes such a world of a difference. We forget how to touch ourselves. We forget how to connect to ourselves. And you could just be putting lotion on, right? And it's just going to make you feel so much better. It's just going to bring that connection to yourself so much stronger, right? Is that what you meant? Is that what you were getting to?
Yeah, and I think also just, talking about it, normalizing it, and helping, I talk a lot about just love languages and how, like, for example, the different love languages that worked for in your relationship might shift when you're in, postpartum. Like if you're a person who, shows you care for them by being really affectionate, and then you're in this time period where you just need to not have any anyone touching you for a time, and you're just so overwhelmed with physical touch, then that's not going to be that same love language. Or for example, if you were a person who it was about acts of service and that you really tended to them in a lot of ways, with making them food or just different ways of nurturing, and you're
Right.
overwhelmed and you're under a baby all day, then that shifts. And so it's that there might just be a change or a disconnect for a time, between a partner and a postpartum person, of just how they're feeling and how they need to receive love and affection as well. That it really does make a difference, to have these other ways of being cared for, to just have somebody say, like, you're so beautiful, you're working so hard to just care for our baby, or these things that we need, just might look different. And so I think
Yeah.
having open communication with a partner, or partners, before, in pregnancy and during birth and in postpartum, to just you know keep that line of communication open, and also to just say what you need. There, sexuality does ebb and flow, or just if there's so many things on your mind or your body's overwhelmed, the amount of space in your day or in your relationship, just might be different for a little while, but it doesn't need to be forever. People
Yes.
change, we choose,
Yeah.
um, and so, yeah, having, and then also it might take some deliberate, like, steps and effort to come back, feeling good about being in your body when it's just gone through so much, when it's
Yeah.
just, so many things have happened, and
Yeah.
and that you can feel the most powerful and beautiful and all of those things, and also feel like you don't want to share it with someone, you know like, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of just, like, how some people can just feel incredibly just sensual and all of these things when they're on their moon, but they don't actually want to have intercourse in any way. That there
Yes.
are these different ways that we just are, and that needs to be okay. It needs to be
Mhm.
okay. It needs to be remembered that it's normal. It needs to be just, have communication and kindness and, affection and caregiving in all of the other ways.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That you hit it right on the nail. Everything you said was absolutely right. It is all so totally normal, and it's totally okay. Everybody has that permission to just feel what it is that they're going through. When you start to acknowledge your feelings and your emotions that are happening, you can better then, identify and be able to have a better understanding and almost a handle on what it is you're going through, right? And you have a partner or partners that are around you, that are your rock, your support, to make you feel a safe space to be able to say these things that you need to say, how you're feeling. I don't want to be touched, or I don't want to be touched that way, right? And these things are totally normal. Like, so many women go through these, right? And birth in itself is a trauma that our body goes through, right? It's not a horrific trauma, so to speak, but it's still a trauma in itself that we've endured to go through this. It's a beautiful trauma. And so we've forgotten to give ourselves the credit that we deserve for everything that we had just been through. We forget to feel that bond in our being pregnant, creating that life, giving birth, and then to be bonding with that human being here on planet Earth, to hold them, to nurse them, to feed them, however you feed them, right? And to have that connection. When we live in a society where it's go, 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 and we are expected of so much, we forget. We feel like we need to just have this baby bounce back and just get right back on that train and get going. But it's a real spiritual time that you go through when you're having a baby, and when you're opened up to creation, when you're opened up to the spirit world, because you're bringing that life here. You have to be very careful, and all those emotions and all those feelings that you're going through is because you're so open and so vulnerable, that you have to really be careful and really give yourself the opportunity to feel these normal feelings that's going on, to feel these normal emotions that are going through, flooding through you. And so, like, for myself, with my partner, with my husband, I know towards the end of my pregnancies, I was like, I don't feel sexy, I don't feel good, I'm so pregnant, I can't move, my feet are swollen, I'm tired, you know. And he just continues to support, and he continues to say the things that I really needed to hear just to keep me feeling better, right? Because we start to feel really down on ourselves, and we start to forget, like, oh yeah, I'm building an eyeball here, I should probably give myself a little bit more credit. So sorry.
Well, let's talk also just, I mean, you've shared a lot about just like healthy changes and, and about pleasure, but can we just kind of go to the deeper place of that? A lot of times, the experience of all the changes in a pregnancy, or all that is happening, and the fact that we just can't have control, because control has no place in birth, and that can really activate deeper layers of trauma and childhood sexual abuse, or whatever that looks like for someone. And so I guess I just I loved what you wrote, and I just sent it to you so that you could read it. But, there is this piece about that, pleasure is robbed from many people in many of their relationships. Whether it is because they are a child who's exploited, or because, their consent, wasn't part of their sexual history, whatever that looks like. And that it it is a really just vulnerable opening time where you know everything is opened up in pregnancy. And that it also means that we have to tend to some of those wounds, maybe for the first time, or maybe that we don't even know where they come from, but that there's all of the sensations and maybe discomforts, or pain, that it can just really activate things that are really deep within our body. And
Yeah.
so, doing the work you do about helping people own pleasure, as well as just being a part of birth. If someone came to you and, was worried that they, their sexual trauma history, whatever that looked like, and that, they were coming into pregnancy or in postpartum, what would be some advice to them?
So whenever we have experienced, like you said, traumas as in our childhood and things like that, I actually had a client a few years ago who never shared with anybody about what she had experienced. And it was an eye-opener for me to be in the delivery room, to see her completely a whole different person. She was shutting down because she was afraid of anything that had to do with her body, because she was so raw in her pregnancy, and going through labor, it triggered her, like you were saying. Like it really peels back those layers, it really opens you up, it really brings a lot to the surface that maybe you thought you got rid of, or maybe you thought that you pushed aside. But to whenever we talk about trauma, and whenever we talk about the things that we've been through, it's really a big deal to work on those, because traumas will block right here, and even our vaginal opening. It'll really block all of that area. And so when we're trying to, you know, have these conversations with these women who are breaking down these barriers, or haven't even realized those barriers were up sometimes, right? They are then faced with looking in the mirror, right? And that's where I like to step in, because I want them to not only fight through these traumas of however they were traumatized, to be able to move forward, to be able to be in the now, because when then they can start to experience life forward the way they deserve to. When you, like I talk about reconnecting the spirit all the time, about having them aligning and grounding their bodies, aligning and grounding, and is all of that has to really do with, you know, going back to where we were when we were traumatized. And it's such a scary thing to deal with, but a lot of us have those things, right? I myself have my own things that I had to deal with over the years. My husband had those that they had to do. Well, my husband doesn't give birth, but everybody, we've all had these things happen where we've had some sort of a trauma done to us that really puts a strain on us moving forward, and there's a blockage, right? And there's a blockage here, there's a blockage here in our heart, and it really affects the rest of our bodies, our stomachs, our sensual side, our sexual side, our pleasure. All of these things will start to shut down, because that's our scapegoat. That's like, we're like, nope, I ain't doing this. No, I don't want to do this. When I had that client of mine do that, it was really an eye-opener for me to see that this is a real thing. Like, our women have gone through a lot of trauma, and we need to empower, encourage, be there for them, give them that space so that they can overcome, and one day be able to say that I beat it, you know?
But yeah, the piece that I sent it to you. Maybe you should just read what you said, and just read that quote, because it is about regaining control and to own what pleasure means to you. And I just really loved, what was in there. So do you want to just take a second and read that?
You want me to just read the quote that I put on?
Just
Oh,
read
okay.
it and talk about, what all of these things have meant.
Oh, okay. So it's like my mission statement, and it was an activity that we were given in the company that I work with, and it really brought me back. It really made me think about myself, and it was actually hard. It was really hard to do, to put together a mission statement. I was like, what does that even mean, right? And so it took a little while for me, but I had to really go back to my roots and really find out what it is that I do as a sexual educator, as a romance therapist, what it is that I'm doing and why it is that I do. And so I come up with this, and absolutely beautiful. And it just like, I didn't know I had it in me to put this piece together, actually. But I wrote, as a woman with a voice and power, I stand for the traditions in my native community. I stand for women all over to own their bodies, their pleasure, their sensuality, and their sexuality. I teach women to regain control of their own bodies, to own what pleasure means to them, whether it's sensual or sexual. Because everybody's pleasure looks different to each individual, right? I do what I do because pleasure is our birthright. I do what I do because we all have traumas and we all deserve to be happy and rise above them. I do what I do so passionately because I have daughters and sons to raise. And so they give me the purpose, right? They give me the motivation that how I want my human beings to take care of themselves, right? Because we all, if you have children, we all want our kids to be happy and to grow up and to be, you know, good human beings.
You were just talking about raising, you know, sons and daughters, and you know, and that pleasure, you know, I love that because I know this about you, of just that you're talking about this not just with your daughters, but with your sons as well.
Yeah.
And that's a really big difference.
Yeah.
You know, there's so often these conversations are separate, and you know, this, you know, talking about, you know, the reality of so many people, just male and female and everywhere in between, not knowing, you know, about, you know, how each other's bodies work,
Yeah.
and you know, and also about just um, intimacy and sacrifice, and you know, all of those things that are part of being in relationship with people. um,
Right.
so anyway, I just wanted, you know, like, how are you talking to your sons and your daughters? I mean, you have a lot of different ages, and you
Yeah.
know, normalizing these
Have,
things is really a big step, right?
yes. Yes. So I have a 16-year-old. I have a daughter. I have a 15-year-old son. I have a 12-year-old son, a 6-year-old son, and a 2-year-old son, or a 6-year-old daughter, sorry, and a 2-year-old son. And so yeah, I have all ages, and they're all unique individuals of their own way. And I just take the approach like how I was talked to about this was I wasn't. I never had these conversations about my body, about what was feeling good and what was going on. What is this thing that I'm feeling here, Ma? What's going on? And you know, and a lot of times I was criticized, and a lot of times I was made fun of. I was mocked, and it was because it was just awkward, right? It was an awkward conversation to have with your parents or anybody older in your family that you thought you could turn to, right? And so I just take that, my own experience, and I say to myself, like, okay, how would I have wanted to be talked to? I would want to be normalized. I would want the fact that, okay, my body's going through these changes and I want to experience this pleasure that I'm feeling, but why do I feel so wrong, right? We feel wrong because the minute our child is 2, 3 years old and they start digging in their diaper, touching themselves, we're like, don't do that, that's dirty. Don't do that, that's gross, right? You start teaching them that right away, first thing. That's their mentality, is what's in their diaper is dirty. They know it feels good, whatever they're doing down there. They know it feels good, but they don't put the connection to sexuality, right? They don't know that. They just know that their body feels good. And so when my older boys were smaller and they started to have these tendencies that normal boys will go through, I would just tell them, there's nothing wrong with that. Just go and do that stuff in your bedroom. That's your body. That's your personal space. Nobody else needs to see that or be around that. And when you're done, wash your hands. And that was it. You know, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I didn't laugh at them. I didn't, you know, poke fun at them or anything like that. And then the same thing with my girls, you know, like, this is your body part. This is what's going on, you know. And my youngest one she's just like me. She's so vocal. She has no filter. She does not care who's going to hear her, right? So she's there and she's like, this tickles. This feels good, you know. And I'm like, great. Your body's a beautiful thing. But do that in your bedroom, okay? And make sure you wash your hands when you're done. Oh, okay. Now it's like, okay, leave me alone. I'm going to my room. No big deal. No big deal at all, right? But to also make sure that I keep that window of consent very, 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 very stressed, you know. And I never wanted them to learn that, you know, calling their parts anything but what they really are, right? My youngest daughter, she calls it her vulva. This is my vulva. I know what it is. You know, she doesn't call it a cookie. She doesn't call it anything cute or anything like that. Because we do those things because we're covering it up. It's shameful. Nobody wants to say vulva. Nobody wants to say penis, right? So we put those cute little terms to it so that we don't feel uncomfortable. If our kid shows up at the table and says, my vulva is tickling me, and you're like, oh my God, I'm having dinner with my in-laws, you know, things like that, to keep it normalized so that your kids aren't like ashamed or shy or, you know. But I also stress, like, that's your body part. That's nobody else's body part. You only get one. You only get one body, so you take care of it. You know, you just take care of it to the best of your ability, right? And that's how they've all been introduced and talked to about their bodies and things like that. And it's funny because some of my friends will message me or ask me, like, okay, my son is like 14 now and he's like won't stop touching himself. Like, how do I talk to him? And I'm like, talk to him like you talk to him about hockey. Talk to him like you talk to him about whatever. Don't make it uncomfortable for them, because then they'll hang on to that and they'll believe that there's something wrong, right? And there's something wrong with their body, and right, you know what I mean? So.
Can you just talk a little bit about what, you know, why are you choosing to do that? That's different than, because that wasn't how you were raised, you know, and, you know, what's the goal at the end of the day? There are so many people who are, um, who grow up in realities of just feeling shame about normalcy, or that don't know the actual names for their body parts. You know, I teach baby massage, for example, and, you know, just from this newborn, this brand new baby, this simple act of like, you know, putting the oil in your hands and showing it to the baby, and then they'll respond whether they are wanting to be massaged or not. That's teaching consent from then. It's this, you know, or whether it's your diapering or changing, that, you know, even if you're needing to do these things and they might, you know, just be uncomfortable with the what you're doing, that you're doing it grounded in love and with communication and consent in every way possible. And that, you know, so having baby massage was one of those things that I was like, oh, this is so much deeper. It's so much deeper. Having these conversations about, you as a 1 month old own your body. And I, even as your caregiver, even with that power dynamic that we have here, I am going to ask for consent and be in relationship. And being able to teach that, you know, I really believe that it that is part of changing the course of so many of, you know, our indigenous women being violated, you know, changing the course of so many people who, you know, in the last Zoomcast, which was really powerful, she was talking about just that she didn't even understand that it was sexual abuse, you know, that there's just so much violation on bodies on in such a steady stream, that those ideas of where someone begins and where the other person begins, especially when there's violations in childhood, lead to further violations in in teenage years and in early, in adulthood, of just, demanding that touch be grounded in consent and relationship and and in love, or at least, like I said, it doesn't have to be love per se, but in just grounded in, a kindness at the very least. So I wanted to just kind of put some words and some terms to that, in how, these little things of talking about body parts, of just normalizing orgasm, of just, all these kinds of things. Yes, it's about pleasure, and it's also about, curbing the story of our indigenous bodies being violated, and that just being accepted as normal. That's just what it happens to us in childhood, in adulthood, that's just what happens to, in particular, women's bodies. So I wanted to just put some space to that. And if anyone has anything else they'd like to add, I did change the setting so that anyone can unmute themselves. And I'm curious if, Yesenia, if you want to just talk about your question, or if you would like me to read it. Either one is fine.
Yeah, I can just talk. Yeah, so Alicia, I had a question related to, what do you think of the sexuality that comes from doing moon rituals?
What's moon rituals like? During your moon time, or like?
What is the, I understand that there's a connection between the moon and a female's reproductive system. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of that? What do you think of the moon and the connection that it has to women?
I love the moon. The moon is everything that we are. The moon is our grandmother and our connection. The moon watches over the waters. The moon watches over, and we are water, right? When we're carrying a baby, the baby's in water. The moon watches over the children and the pregnant women and all that, right? And when we talk about, I have a little joke with my nurse friends, because they always joke around. They're like, oh, that full moon comes out and all the moms come in here because they're all in labor and this and that, and oh, here we go, there's all the babies are going to come out, full moons here, right? But the full moon has the connection to us with releasing, right? It's about letting go. Having a full moon ceremony with the girls doesn't have to be anything perfect, doesn't have to be anything like buy a book or anything. It's about releasing. It's about the love and the connection. It's about your connection to creation, and your connection to everything that she's overlooking, she's watching. And a lot of times when I talk about the women's connection to the moon, it's really because, like, when you think about it, we're so busy and we're going with our families and our day-to-day life all day long, that when the kids go to bed, sometimes we're like, okay, I can get things done now. My kids go to bed at 8 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to run out and get groceries now. That's when the moon's out. That's why we're so connected to that, right? And so the moon helps to give us our connection with our moon time, with our children and things like that, and all that I lost my train of thought, that process. But also the new moon has to do with renewal. So you have your full moon to give you the space when you're releasing, but you also have the new moon, which gives you the space to manifest things that are coming, right? And I always joke around with my husband that the boys are before the full moon and the girls are after the full moon, because the girls are all about holding on, and then letting go. So I hope that gives you something.
Yeah, it did. I also had another question regarding, you mentioned just once about yoga. And so I wanted to ask, what are some moves that you used while you were both pregnant and to help with your sexuality?
So during my pregnancy, I had a doula who specialized in yoga, prenatal yoga. Actually, I had two of them. And so it was a lot of meditating, and it was a lot of like connecting and grounding so that I could feel all the parts of my body, so that I could practice my breathing techniques, so that I can meditate to the point where when I start my labor, I know how to meditate through my labor. I know how to be able to be sensual in my own body, and to be able to, it wasn't so much like really rigorous yoga movements. It was more the breathing. It was more the relaxing. There were a few stretches. She didn't work me too hard when it came to prenatal yoga. And then afterwards, I started my yoga again after my 6 weeks, and it was a lot of like core building and floor work, where I was like doing my stretches to help build the core back up, to help bring that alignment back together again for the sexuality, for the sensuality. I met with my yoga instructor as well as a pelvic floor physiotherapist, and they were very both similar in the different, in the techniques that they were giving me in terms of floor work, table work. Like I call it table work, but it's like literally you're on your hands and knees, where you lift the opposite arm and the opposite leg, and then vice versa, to help build that core up. And my pelvic floor physiotherapist said that was going to be a great technique to help build that pelvic floor back up, but to also help to get the blood flowing regularly, normally, around the vulva and around the vaginal opening, to help stimulate those nerves and to get that feeling of sensuality back again, right?
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Those are excellent questions.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we wrap up today's Zoomcast?
Hey, I have a question. So sometimes I forget that I'm a woman, and it's just because, like, I feel like I'm a spirit more than a woman, like we are in this body, but it's very temporary. And then I remember when I go into public and the predatory energy comes, and I'm like, oh, like I kind of go into this protection, and I step into my masculine more to protect my feminine. And I'm just wondering how to like balance being free with my sexuality and then protecting myself from predatory energy, because like I want to be able to go out and dress nice and feel good, but then I'm like, oh, if I do that, it might have these aftermaths and consequences. So I'm just looking, I guess, like to learn how to find a balance in that. So do you have any suggestion for that balance?
I think it's beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. You're talking about balance, but I feel like you have it. You have it right there when you say that you know that you have the feminine side, but you can also bring out the masculine side when you need it. And that's beautiful. And actually, I don't really personally like the term balance, because balance is crazy. I mean, I have a crazy hectic life with my business at home, my husband's business at home, and all the kids and everything going on. So I like to say harmony instead, right? So you have this harmony between your masculine and your feminine, and they work together every time you need it, when it needs to be there, right? And there's, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I honestly, personally don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. You are doing exactly what your spirit needs and your spirit is telling you to do. My heart is like, boom, that was beautiful. I'm like so happy that you shared that. I don't know if you can see my face. I was like,
yeah.
But yeah, so.
And I also just want to be very real that, like, for example, when I think about just about healing trauma, and that there is this part of, how can we ever fully let our guard down? And that's very real.
Yeah.
And and that, but the main thing is you've recognized that you get to choose when you do so, and that you're doing so with that you can go out and you can walk out into the world, and that you are always that sexual, beautiful spirit, and that sometimes you're going to add and extend your energy out, to have a layer of protection around you. And maybe that's with actual things that, maybe it's with a big jacket, or with, friends who are keeping an eye, or where you park your car. And maybe it's those kinds of practical things. But also it's a choice of like, I'm gonna look sexy tonight, and it's about me. It is, and that you're just gonna keep all of the, attention that might come your way, and define what it is. Like, okay, I'm okay with looks today. Or I'm gonna dance for myself in the room, or, I'm gonna just be here for me. And so, I want to just, really honor that. I heard a quiver just in your voice, that I think that many of us feel, of, how do we ever just feel like safe in our, like, embracing, you know being sexy in a world that, like, has really taken that and used it to harm. And so I want to just say that what you said, in the way that you're both practically and energetically, having that protection, and that you get to constantly change and define it, and you get to constantly change and define what you need. Put those clothes on because you want to wear them. And no matter what, if you are feeling a certain way, and you want to look a certain way because it matches, what you're looking for, or what you want to just put out to the world, in no way means that, you know other people get to respond to that sexual energy you're putting out. You still get to define that. And so, I just want to say that feeling safe is real, and that's all that we can hope, and that it starts, as Alicia has talked about again and again. It talks with feeling that sense of, like, safety and power and sensuality within yourself, and then you can extend it in tiny bits, in safe ways. But those consequences that you spoke of, those can be about safety, or those can just be about, what energy you're wanting to attract to yourself. But no matter what, you can be, that gorgeous, hot, whatever you want to be, and have it be about no one else, but how you're feeling.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. It's a real thing. It really is a real thing. We are totally and 100% feeling that fear, and for myself, I have daughters, and I'm terrified. I really, really am terrified, but I don't want them to live in the fear. And you sound like you have already found your harmony, your way to maneuver around this type of society that we live in. And it's real. Like Rhonda said, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud you. Like, you're doing an amazing job. It sounds amazing that you can identify both energies and have them working together in that harmony, especially right when you need it.
Yeah, and I
Thank
also
you.
just want to say, with the discussion or the comment, I'll just read it, of, how do we also have this responsibility of teaching our girls about safety and self-defense and confidence and, protection, and also that it's not about cover up or, you don't deserve to feel, like you look good, or any of those kinds of things. And it's my daughter's 21, and it's been a really interesting thing to navigate. And I feel like I took every moment and did it with so much conversation and kindness, that it wasn't about, I was never trying to repress sexuality. It was about learning, when it's appropriate or safe, or, when to choose it, and for the reasons that are from an empowered place, rather than, the just screwed up parts of society. And
Yes.
so, it's true that we have to navigate this all the time as ourselves, and with our children. And I will just say that, just like Alicia shared with, the way it was dealt with in her family is to just not have these conversations. The fact that you're here and having it is such a big start. The fact that we are beginning from a place of, I don't want to carry that anymore, and I don't want to pass it to my next generation. And also, I also have a responsibility, and that, I also want people to just feel safe and to be safe. And that it's really just hard, that sometimes that means, um, you know, wearing a big coat, or whatever. And it's not that, there's ever any excuse for violence, regardless of what is happening. But it's one of those pieces of layers of protection, that it's only one of them, that it's only one of them. There are many, many others around it. Um, and, you know, and there's a part of me that just is disgusted that that's so much of what has to be the conversations with our young girls. I want them to hear that they are divine. I want them to hear that they are, sexual beings. I want them to hear that they have every right, to look and be and feel in every way they can. And that has to be the overlaying message. And we also have to teach them about when to share their sexuality, and when it's not for someone else. And that's part of lessons that we have to navigate with our girls.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree with you 100%. Oh, it's just such a beautiful discussion. It's such a beautiful topic.
Okay, so we are at time, and this is something I feel super passionate about, and I feel like I could talk, for a lot more time. And also that I'm still figuring out, as a, almost 44-year-old woman, and just there's also just elements in my parenting journey and in myself, and healing from my own traumas and abuses and violations, that I wonder, and I assume will just be my entire life of trying to figure out, and that's okay, because that
We're always growing.
yeah,
We're always growing. We're
yeah,
always changing, right? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world, right? People are always doing it. So,
yeah.
so we got to have these discussions, so in a safe place.
So thank you so much, Alicia. And yeah, how about we just, end, and if you have it, I want to end with your voice and your closing thoughts or blessings or prayer for anyone who watches this tape. And then I'll end the recording, but once again, I thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for sitting in and listening, and whether you're watching the live or you're watching the replay, and I really hope that you enjoyed. And I really encourage and I bless all of you guys that are listening, that you can find those voices within you, and you can find that strength within you. And if you want to reach out, I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can hit me up and harass me all you want and ask me all the questions you want. I'm always available. So love, blessings, on all of that beautiful fun stuff.